Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and I think it's time to start a journey through the much-discussed 2012 Generations line of Transformers, based on the Fall of Cybertron video game. And where better to start than the big boss man himself, Optimus Prime? Well, I say big. Now that we're almost a year in retrospect, I'm sure you all know how loaded the question of his size can be. Described by High Moon Studios as a quote-unquote giant fist on wheels, Optimus Prime's new body for Fall of Cybertron disposes of its former sleek lines for industrial strength ramming speed, edges, and angles. It's noticeably wider and powered by 6 times the alien smokestacks. Prime's rifle has an angled peg specifically designed to allow it to plug in and still shoot straight in this mode. Comparing the fist on wheels to 2010's War for Cybertron mold, things look somewhat on par. From the front, any other angle reveals that this toy is a lot more compact. A couple years of economic decline have taken their toll on the poor bot. Another big change from his 2010 iteration is Optimus Prime's far less insane transformation. I did have a lot of love for the War for Cybertron plastic puzzle, but this new body hits a really fun balance of speed and parts flippery. Right down to the integrated head reveal, I think the FOC Optimus toy is a lot more fun to change back and forth, and doesn't feel too simplified for his price point. Still in line with his Fall of Cybertron redesign, Optimus is a big-chested bot made of angles and heroic chunk. I find his chest feels a little too big, protruding out a bit farther than I'd like, but that owes somewhat to the source material. My major qualm with his robot mode would be the bumper pieces that are simply chilling out, unlockable, under his forearms. He does have a satisfying shape when he's holding his rifle and placed in a proper A stance, though. And his head sculpt, while a little tiny, looks very sharp and full of emotion. Putting him next to his generation's predecessor makes an even bigger show of how much smaller this new figure is, compared to the 2010 version. The FOC Optimus does have a lot less junk hanging off of his back, but even ignoring the figures and looking at the source material, I think the War for Cybertron Optimus simply has a more heroic leader feel to his silhouette. Those shoulder thingies go a long way to win me over. This guy is a little package, but he's a package that's posable. His head's on a decent ball joint, with a lot of range, and the range is fantastic. It's just seated in a strange place, so sometimes it can look a bit weird from the wrong angles. However, this does mean he can look forward when you have him in the kind of pose that kind of just hides the lack of a full-on neck down there. His shoulders are also on ball joints, with a proper range. When they're forward, it's harder to get them to go outwards unless you get this out of the way. Then it's only mildly harder to get them to go outwards. It's still really hard to get them to go outwards, I suppose. That doesn't accomplish too much, but the bicep swivel does, as does the elbow hinge, which, thanks to a factor of the transformation, is kinda double-jointed because it's hollow. The downside being it's hollow. He's got a ball joint on his waist, which is, in theory, really great, because it can go, like, as a minor sort of reverse ab crunch, go backwards, even. The problem is it doesn't lock down in this position, and I really wish there was some kind of clip or detent to hold it here, because it's really easy to just knock him up like this, and then it's just like, Prime, what are you doing, man? Just get it back to... Thank you. Get it back together. His hips are on ball joints. His thighs are swiveling. His knees, thanks to the transformation, they're a single joint, but again are able to get a very deep bend going on. And his ankles have a pretty good tilt, considering how close to the shins and calves his feet actually are. So you can get a very decent A stance with this guy. They've also got a much wider forward and backward tilt. Posability-wise, this guy's actually pretty good. However, there is an elephant in the room when it comes to the Fall of Cybertron toys and this version of Generations in general. And I'm going to talk about that here in the posability section. This guy is light. His plastic, there is a lot of discussion on the plastic these guys are made of. I don't think this is cheap-feeling plastic. I think, however, it is much more hollow than anyone is used to. I don't think the actual polymer is poor. It's just a construction that is lacking the density of the, 2009 through 2010 era of, like, super dense, very satisfying deluxes. And, I still kind of like this guy, but I can't deny that he feels way lighter than what a longtime collector may be used to in the 2000s, or, the 2010s. I think this is also attributed to the fact that there are very few screws involved in his construction. That minor loss of metal adds up when, like, the only visible screws I'm seeing is, like, there's 4 of them here in the legs, and I think there's 1 or 2 more back here, like, deep set in here. A lot more of this stuff, instead of using pins and screws, there's a lot more, like, ball joints and these mushroom cap connections, and I think between the weight and the more hollow construction, and the way that a lot of the detailing on this guy is only on one side of each part of the body, it adds up to that feeling of what happened to my video game Transformers. They all feel so cheap. Unless I'm missing something, I don't know. This guy's polymer it's not flexing, it's not bending when I squeeze it, so that part feels right. The actual polymer, to me, just doesn't feel different. The construction feels different, and that's the part where the economy did show up, the capital T, capital E economy, and it kind of stepped all over the parade that was going on. We all knew this was coming, and hey, by now, in 2013, we're sort of coming out of it, but this guy is, I think, the first example of that larger discussion one can have about 2012's Transformers. It is easy to dismiss this figure on the grounds of his size, but I think that caused a lot of people to ignore what FOC Optimus does right. He's a very solid little transforming robot figure, with 2 fun modes and a really good desk toy transformation. The main thing that rides against him is his identity. Were he not presented as Optimus Prime, I think he'd have gone over a lot better overall. Certainly he's lightweight and a bit short, even for a 2012 Deluxe, but there's a lot of tactile fun packed into his frame. Even if you aren't interested in having another Optimus Prime, I'd say keep an eye out for redecos and remolds of this guy. He's by no means terrible, just middling in the face of what came before him. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and yeah, I'll be looking at Ultra Magnus as well. I mean, that's kind of a given, right? He's standing in the background of this shot. Come on. Big mystery, guys. I don't know. Maybe sorry, I got it. Bye.